This episode of Fearless Rebel Radio is brought to you by You on Fire. You on Fire is the amazing 12-week online group coaching program that I run, where we build up your worth from the ground up so that it's no longer hinging on the way that you look. It's got personalized coaching from me and incredible community support, plus lifetime access. Get details on what's included in this program and sign up to be notified when doors open for the next cycle by going to summerinanen.com/you on fire. I would love to have you in that program and in that group. This is Fearless Rebel Radio, a podcast about body positivity, self-worth, anti-dieting, and feminism. I am your host, Summer Inanen, a professionally trained coach specializing in body image, self-worth, and confidence, and the best-selling author of Body Image Remix. If you're ready to break free of societal standards and stop living behind the number on your scale, then you have come to the right place. Welcome to the show. This is episode 123, and I am interviewing Dr. Colleen Reichmann about the problems with wellness and fitness culture, how they hurt our mental health, and how to heal an obsessive relationship with these things. You can find all the links and resources mentioned in this episode at summerinanen.com/123, because it's episode 123. That's cool. Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to Meme8, who left this amazing review. Summer's positivity and warmth is utterly contagious. Oh, thank you. Her message is important and she's stepping out to share the message with the world. This podcast is very relevant and presents important topics related to empowerment and body positivity. This podcast has helped me in my recovery journey and has helped fill my media with encouraging and cheerful podcasts. Thank you so much for that amazing review. If you haven't already done so, please take 2 minutes to leave a review for the show. It helps others to find everything that you're learning here and helps to keep the show alive and well. You can do that by heading to iTunes, searching for Fearless Rebel Radio, and then click ratings and reviews and click to leave a review or give it a rating. In addition to that, take a second to subscribe to the show via iTunes or whatever platform you use so that you never miss an episode. Lastly, you can get the free 10-day body confidence makeover at summerinanen.com/freebies with 10 steps to take right now to feel better in your body. And you can always find everything at thebodyimagecoach.com if you can't spell my last name. Today's guest is Colleen Reichmann. Dr. Colleen Reichmann is a licensed clinical psychologist practicing in Williamsburg, Virginia. She works in her private practice Wildflower Therapy and is a staff psychologist at the College of William and Mary. She has recovered from an eating disorder, and this experience sparked her passion for spreading knowledge and awareness that recovery is possible. She is an advocate for feminism, body liberation, fat acceptance, and health at every size. She writes about body image and eating disorders for morelove.org, Project Heal, The Mighty, Recovery Warriors, and more. We really blow up wellness and fitness culture here and talk about why we both think keto diet is the worst, which is a conversation that needs to be had. All right. I think you're going to enjoy it. Check it out. Hi, Colleen. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm happy to have you here today. I'm excited to talk about all the things I want to talk to you about. So I think it's going to be good.
Me too.
Yeah. So I'd love you to start out by telling everyone a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I struggled with an eating disorder. I struggled with anorexia throughout high school and college. And I was definitely a treatment resistant person. I was, in a place for a really long time where I did not want to get better. So when I finally just started embracing recovery and moving towards, kind of past the eating disorder and finding a life without it, I did not want to look back. I definitely did not want to. I never saw myself where I am today, which is working with people who have eating disorders. Mm-hmm. I was kind of the mindset, I knew I wanted to help people. So I wanted to go to graduate school for psychology, but I was of the mindset, I never want to look back. It was such an awful, decade, and never talking about eating disorders again. But somehow, I guess throughout graduate school, just working with college students and doing different internships, I just stumbled upon I eventually did work with somebody with an eating disorder, and I realized almost immediately, like, wow, this gives me a really great empathy chip for understanding an illness that is quite difficult to understand. And then from there, it just sort of took off. My passion for it took off, and I did my internships and my fellowships at inpatient eating disorders units, and just kind of sought out experiences to become specialized in the area. And now I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I specialize in the treatment of eating disorders and body image.
And so you're an advocate of fat acceptance and health at every size and feminism. Like, when did that come into your life? When and how did that influence the way that you, I guess, either your recovery or how you worked with clients?
Yeah, it wasn't a part of my recovery process, I would say. I just hadn't heard of it, and none of my therapists, any of the teams that I worked with ever introduced health at every size or fat acceptance at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was in graduate school, and even maybe the first, my predoctoral internship, which was about 5 years ago, there was no mention of that. There was no mention in any of my classes, any of the inpatient treatment centers. So it really started to come. I found out about it through sort of online resources. Like the Health at Every Size Facebook groups and articles, and almost social media was what brought me into the space. And it just made so much sense. When I first read about it, when I got a hold of Linda Bacon's book, read all of it within like 2 days, and it made so much sense. And it was kind of like the missing piece, like, oh, that was what was definitely missing in my recovery process, and that is what's missing in my work now. Like, it always felt like it wasn't full, the work that I was doing, or it wasn't genuine, because I was kind of, telling people, you have to recover, you have to start eating, what you want, and giving up exercise if you don't want to do it, in this culture that's obsessed with not eating what you want and exercising and doing all the exercise that you hate and everything. So it felt very ingenuine until I got the Health at Every Size book and just started reading more and more about it. And
Nice.
I was like, oh, okay, here it is.
Yeah. Like, do you find, in your practice that a lot of other psychologists or therapists are unaware of it, as it relates to eating disorder recovery? Like, do you feel like you're sort of one of those rogue psychologists that's doing something really radical?
I do think that there are a lot of psychologists, and especially, eating disorder psychologists, who don't seem to embrace health at every size. I just actually did a presentation on this where I talked about, here are all the different treatment techniques that we're using in this field that are incredibly fat phobic. For example, body drawing outlines. This is a standard thing in treatment centers where we have people trace, on a big piece of paper what they think their body looks like, and then lay in that tracing and have somebody else trace their real body.
Yes.
And the whole idea is, so you hold that paper up and say, look how you actually aren't as big as you thought. Like, thank goodness,
Right.
And yeah, that's just, it's kind of I do think health at every size is coming into the eating disorder community more so. I think it's getting definitely a lot more attention in the past, I would say 2 years or so. But I still feel like when talking about fat positivity and body liberation and health at every size in general, I do feel like I have maybe these people think I sound a little bit more radical than I really am, because I'm really just talking about what makes sense. It's what makes sense. But I have been called radical and those types of things by other psychologists.
Yeah. No, I've heard about people's experiences in eating disorder recovery where, it actually fed their fear of weight gain or, fat phobia. And so, yeah, it's great and refreshing to see someone like yourself that's trying to change that for other psychologists as well. So teaching them, like you said, in the lecture that you just did.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle. We're still seeing online profiles for therapists that say things like, I treat obesity and eating disorders. And it's like, obesity is not a thing. And how could you be possibly treating these people who are fearing something else that you're treating then as a disease. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So we need to be talking about it more and just, yeah, definitely getting the word out. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done around it for sure.
right.
So I want to talk to you about wellness and fitness culture because I know that you're really fired up about those two things, or I guess they're what kind of one and the same. But you wrote a blog post, and I think the first sentence, or very near the beginning, one of the sentences is wellness, a term that I have come to despise. Yeah. So can you talk about that? Why do you despise it so much?
I just feel like it's a term that's like dripping with judgment, basically, at this point. And it's wellness culture in general is just so problematic because I think that it's sort of cloaked fat phobia, and it's cloaked orthorexia. And it's just there's so many problems with it, and so much morality that wellness culture ends up linking with food, just the clean eating movement. And I just get angry when I hear the term, because it's kind of like, well, what do you really mean when you say wellness? Do you mean thin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you mean, not eating pretty much every food that tastes good, right? That's what you mean when you say wellness. So I just think it's sneaky. It's the new diet. It's the new fad diet, and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, is like what is wellness in when you try to define it for yourself, or do you just want to remove that word from your vocabulary completely?
I mean, if we're talking about just, taking care of ourselves and listening to our body's, natural wisdom and everything like that, if that's what people truly meant by wellness, I'd be all for it. But I think that currently what we mean by wellness is just this culture of health is the pinnacle of everything that you should be, all the time in your day should be devoted to bettering your health. And by that, we mean losing weight, essentially. And that, you have to go on paleo diets and be in ketosis and do workouts for 2 hours a day that you really hate. And that it's just, and also food it's a really black and white thing. There's really terrible food. There's very clean, pure food. And I think that if that's what we're meaning by wellness, we've lost essentially what it meant to begin with. And that is what I think most people mean when they say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel like we're becoming more obsessed with it as a culture? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, I definitely think, we're becoming more obsessed every day, it seems like. And I personally, when I stop to think about it, it seems like it stems from, I think the idea of wellness and putting all of your energy into making sure your body is at the pinnacle of health and you're doing everything, I think it just stems from this, maybe a desire to have control, which we human beings love. We are always looking for things to control. And I think that controlling our health and doing these really black and white steps, it makes people feel like calm for a second when they do them. And, like, okay, well, I'm doing something right. In a world that's completely uncontrollable and chaotic, I'm not eating sugar. So I'm warding off death and illness and all these other things. And so I think it's very enticing.
Yeah.
And it's so provocative for us. That idea of we can control our health and sort of, run away from death, basically.
Yeah, I remember reading, the name of the book is going to escape me now. It's on my recommended book list that I give to people. But anyways, it's written by this guy that just kind of like blows up the self-help world and shows, the problems with self-help. But one of the things he talks about is how, we're just trying to control everything because we're actually more afraid of uncertainty than we are of death. Like that's been studied. I don't know if you know that, or if that's like, I don't know what he was referencing when he said that. I can't remember, but that we're just so like that idea of uncertainty or like not having control. We're more scared of that than actually dying.
Yeah, I don't know the studies that the author is referring to, but I can totally believe that. I think it makes sense given just Yeah, I think human behavior, we despise uncertainty. We just are not great at handling it and sitting in like the gray area and all of that stuff. So we love anything that says like, well, this will give you this is definitely going to help. Like this is the right path, you know?
Yeah, and the problem with that is like it's such a false sense of control because so often what happens is people stick to these things for, like a month or in my case, like 3 days. And then you quote unquote, lose all control. So you think you're the problem.
Yeah, and then it kind of spirals into, then you have shame that you weren't able to kind of live up to this and that you lost control. And if you take the rhetoric from the clean eating movement, now you're dirty because you're not eating clean, you're eating the dirty food. And it's just, I think it's brilliant from the diet industry perspective because it is the new wellness industry is the new diet industry, essentially. And it's a brilliant marketing tactic, I think, to market things that we definitely are meant to fail. Like we're meant to fail these diets that are super, super restrictive and these fitness regimens that we all hate. But we blame ourselves and then feel like we're to blame and go into the shame spirals and then go back to try again because it's like, well, it is the path to certainty. It is the way to feel better. Like everybody's saying it. So I have to try again. It's just, it's brilliant.
Well, and the online component of it too really fuels that because you see the people who promote the plans or, you go to forums where everyone's talking about it or podcasts where everybody's talking about it. And it seems like everyone is just able to do it without having any of the, reactive eating or, like binge response because, they only seem to share those stories or they kind of give, this glimpse into their lives like they're always eating that way and like everything is perfect. And it just makes us feel like our willpower or like we're the problem because we can't keep up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think online, just social media and the online component makes it the perfect storm, honestly, because there are so many communities and there are so many people that if you look at, for example, Instagram, the wellness Instagrammers, they're also, they're all thin, they're all conventionally attractive, and they all talk about eating in pretty black and white terms and make it look easy. They'll post pictures like in yoga outfits and sponsored ads with green juices and it's so enticing.
Yeah.
Because like I could be like that. Basically they are saying you could be like me, you just have to eat this. And it's one snapshot in time of their life, one probably really posed snapshot in time of their life. And but we see it and we don't sort of unpack it like that for ourselves. We just think, oh my God, she has everything and I could too if I just do that.
Yeah. I feel like things just keep getting more extreme and restrictive too. So that's what I've noticed, like a couple years ago, or maybe more than that, actually. It was probably around 10 years ago. Paleo was kind of new to the scene and that was like the really big thing. And now it's become even more restrictive because it's shifted towards like the keto diet, which is, like let's take away more food groups. And I sort of wonder and fear what's next. Like, do you feel like things just keep getting more restrictive and extreme?
Yes. And I feel like it keeps moving towards anything that we humans like really enjoy, anything that most of us like sugar, for example, or carbohydrates, anything that and by the way, need to survive, any of those things, we're just shifting towards like cutting them out one by one. Like all of these incredibly important macronutrients, and especially the ones that really taste good. It's like those are sort of essentially every year a new one gets thrown out. And then that's the big craze. Like when is it going to stop?
I know. I sort of wonder if it's just going to be like, okay, you can just breathe air and but this bottled air that we've got from the mountains and the Alps, like not that dirty air that you breathe right now.
Super pure Alp air.
Yep. Yeah. And so, I mean, you've worked with a lot of people who have orthorexia. I mean, where is the line? Like, where does it go from, okay, this is, something that I'm like dabbling with to something that like is become an actual disorder, like an actual problem?
Yeah, I think it's a tough line to draw in the sand. I do think it's very blurry.
Hmm.
I know that not everybody who participates in wellness culture and who goes on the ketosis diet or whatever for whatever reason is going to go on to develop orthorexia, because you definitely have to have the genetic underpinnings and the psychological makeup and all of that. But for those who do, I think the line you can tell when, I mean, essentially it's, is this getting in the way of my life and my happiness, over and over, like
Hmm.
regularly? Is this becoming something that is taking from my life rather than giving to it? Like, am I missing socialization? Am I, losing out on other values because of eating? Is it sort of becoming that it is the most important thing in my life and that's making me unhappy at the end of the day? That's just something to be really, really aware of if you do think you could be going down that route. Because orthorexia is tricky. It's a tricky eating disorder because it is condoned. I mean, our culture and these bloggers, I think, really promote orthorexia in some sense without realizing it with these super restrictive diets and elimination diets and gut health and all this stuff. It's so easy to get sucked into it and not realizing that you have, that it's a problem because it looks like everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I lost my thought there. I was going to say something, but I think it's sometimes it's hard to even understand how much stress it's adding to your life because layered on top of that, there's always this layer of hope of, okay, but if I just try harder, it'll get better. Or if I just do this, then everything will click into place and it'll be fine. And so it's almost hard to see yourself going down the rabbit hole. At least that was my experience. Like I really thought I was super healthy and I didn't realize that what I was doing was actually creating so much stress on my body, both psychologically and physically. Like it's sometimes really hard to see the forest through the trees.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it really does take finding a way to get that insight somewhere that it is taking from your life. And it's hard to do, I think, it's just hard for us to do on our own.
Hmm.
Like, I think it's helpful to have people point it out and just obviously therapists and dietitians and people who can sort of help you unpack what's actually going on and where it really is taking from your life and your freedom, because it is so, again, it's just so enticing to think, well, things might not be going well, but that's just because I'm not doing it well enough. And if I do it better, or if I try this next thing, I know it's all going to snap into place eventually.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see, I think, for yourself until something, I mean, until it gets, I guess, extreme, and then it becomes just something you have to sort of confront.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. For the record, can I just say the keto diet is the worst?
Yes.
I don't think I've ever said it on
Yes.
the podcast, but I just need to say
It's
that to people.
worse. I totally agree. Whenever I come out against, I put a post on Instagram, and I got so many hate messages from, it was like a joking post about bulletproof coffee saying like, pass, I'll be drinking my light and sweet until that fad recedes. And and the ketosis crowd was so livid. Oh my gosh, people got so mad at me and like sent me like death threats and things like that. So it's definitely the worst, but I think it garners maybe a lot of it's just people get passionate about it for some reason, but it's
Hmm.
awful. It's awful.
Yeah, low carb, low carb. I mean, I wasn't calling it keto at the time, but low carb dieting was really the one, the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Like that was what really really messed my body up and messed my metabolism up for a while. And I see that with clients. It's one of the harder ones to recover from, to come back to a normal relationship with food. That
Yeah.
compared to other ways of eating that people have done in the past, like something, like Weight Watchers or even paleo. I find it's easier for people to, make friends with carbohydrates again. But once you've had that kind of keto experience and mindset, it's it just instills this massive fear of carbohydrates, which are so essential and needed. And I think especially for women, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
In terms of carbohydrates being needed,
Yeah.
especially for women.
Yeah, especially for women. Yeah.
I mean, I just know in general, humans. We need them, but they're so important. And I think there's so much, unfortunately, there's so much fear mongering around carbohydrates and sugar these days that I think if you are, you do one of those diets and then you try to give it up, you're also swimming upstream in our culture. So it just feels like very counterintuitive. But they are essential, and they're, I think there's research on that is what, and I don't know if this is woman specific, but that's what we crave when we're craving comfort, when we need comfort and we're seeking food to sort of soothe ourselves, which is fine. We're humans are just like sort of drawn towards carbohydrates for comfort.
Yeah.
And so we're telling ourselves you can't have them at all. And that's the food that's going to help you self-soothe at the end of the day, but it's completely off limits. I mean, it's obvious that that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much across the board, people who eat carbohydrates feel so much better, in my opinion. Like when people come back to that, to adding that stuff back in their life, they're like, oh, and I feel so much better now. I'm like, yeah.
You're feeding yourself.
Exactly. Who else has tried FabFitFun? You're going to want to check it out because I'm all about treating yourself. If you don't already know about it, FabFitFun is a seasonal box with full-size beauty, fitness, and lifestyle products. Their spring editors box is amazing. It includes awesome products like a Free People eye mask, beauty and skincare products such as a Tarte Double Duty Leave Your Mark eyeshadow palette, and a Rachel Pally clutch. And that's just the beginning of it. Don't miss out because they sell out fast. Check out www.fabfitfun.com and use the code REBELLE, REBELLE, so you can save $10 off your first box, making it only $39.99. Again, that's fabfitfun.com and use the code REBELLE, REBELLE. You deserve to treat yourself. So, okay. So if this is resonating with people listening, what are some things that people can do to stop their obsession with wellness, aka like quit that diet mentality?
I definitely think that starting to notice how all of it is making you feel psychologically is really, really important. So if people aren't ready to give up, the wellness, the dieting and the workouts, at least start to notice how it's making you feel. Like notice how you feel when you don't work out or something for one day, or notice how you feel when you do have sugar at an event, and notice the type of guilt that can be there, and just sort of start to call that out for yourself, to call that out, like, this is really, this is happening, and is it really worth it at the end of the day to keep doing these things? Like asking yourself that sort of over and over, because I don't think it's something that happens. Like I just rarely hear of it all of a sudden, people saying, oh, and then I realized I had like the light bulb moment that it was just ruining my life. And now I think people have to sort of call it out over and over for themselves, and start also just online, maybe on the social media world, start looking into other ways of, like, the people who are promoting intuitive eating and the people who are promoting movement for joy and fat acceptance and things like that. Just exposing yourself little by little to that type of rhetoric, I think, can be really important, because it's sort of an argument for the other side, like life on the other side. And I think it can be really persuasive if you sort of immerse yourself in that world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that it takes people like a little bit of time to really come to the decision of, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, or, I'm really going to work on trying to listen to my body and break free of that diet mentality. It's, it doesn't have that allure like dieting does that makes people want to like go and dive headfirst into it. It takes a bit of time, and just like your mind kind of has to process it. I think, at least that's sort of what I've noticed when I've talked to people about how they got into it.
Yeah, because you're right. It's not this other things. Wellness culture is really promising like a kind of a quick fix, like immediate gratification. And this is, if we're being honest, this is like, it's swimming upstream, but it is it's the key to long-term peace. So it's going to take a while to see the benefit, but it is, if you're looking for long-term peace, not fleeting moments of feeling calm because you avoided sugar in that moment, then then moving away from that and more towards intuitive eating and moving for joy is for you. But it's just not as enticing as the, like, here's this, really structured diet regimen that's going to solve every ailment you have. It's going to make you live a really long time. It's just not as enticing as those promises.
And giving up control is so hard. So, we talked about this need to have control and that desire for control. And I think what people really struggle with when they start to make this transition is giving up that control. What do you recommend? What advice do you have for people who are really struggling with that control freak voice that's saying, no, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, like creating a bunch of fear around it?
Well, I definitely think if you are struggling with that and you're not already seeing a therapist, I think seeing a therapist can be really helpful because it's just it's another mind in the room to kind of help you point out what you can't see for yourself, which is that, what you think you're controlling with all of this is actually controlling you. And, it's making you miserable at the end of the day. It's for whatever reason, like we were talking about, it can just be tough to see the forest through the trees. So having someone there to help point that out and give recommendations for defying the voice, because I think another thing that is going to have to happen if you're really caught up with the control freak voice or an eating disorder voice or an inner critic that's really loud is you're going to have to defy it and not do what you normally do to quiet the voice, which is seek those fleeting moments of control. And I think having somebody who can provide recommendations that are really tailored to you in terms of how to defy it and where to start is super, super helpful. Mm-hmm. If it's accessible, that is. Obviously, there's financial restrictions in terms of therapy. And then also, if we're talking about food, learning how to let go of the control there, I think an anti-diet dietitian is really, really important because it's really helpful to have, or at least I found back in the day, it was helpful to have somebody who I felt like, okay, they have training and they have a degree, like they know what they're talking about. So let them fight this, eating disorder voice or this really loud critic that I have in my head. Like I will sort of let them fight for me in the moment because, I can't just trust myself to do this, but I think I can trust somebody with all the degrees. Yeah. And so that was just very, very helpful for me personally. So I would recommend that as well.
Well, it's hard to do it on your own, especially in a culture where everyone else is doing the opposite.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely. And there is the component that when you see the anti-diet dietitians, you'll, hopefully work with someone who's health at every size informed and will tell you to kind of reject the wellness culture hoopla. So I think that brings along a component, another struggle, which is you'll be in their office and learning about all this stuff and then leave and everyone around you and all like the billboards and just articles and commercials will be saying the exact opposite of what they just said. So it's like, do I trust this person or like, is this person lying to me? Is this person just, not wanting my best interest? Why are they telling me like chocolate's okay?
Right.
When everyone else says it's not okay. So that's another hurdle to work through. But I think if you're really honest if you do have the team, if you're honest with your dietitian about that experience and your therapist, your team can also help you get through that as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people out there spewing the anti-diet message or using that rhetoric or the language, but that are still part of the wellness culture, which I think is something for people to really watch out for too, and just use your spidey senses there.
Yes, that makes me so angry. I can't people just sort of co-opting the anti-diet movement. I've seen people going back to ketosis because we both agree it's the worst. I've seen people that are ketosis coaches or whatever say like on their websites, aren't you tired of the diet merry-go-round? Like, isn't it time to get off and just listen to your body and yourself? And it's like, oh my God, you're just stealing this message and you're twisting it and you're making it so, that's like really sneaky. That makes me so angry. So yeah, definitely use your spidey.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that because I'll get people who want to come on the podcast and they'll be like, I love your message. And I'm like all about ditching diets. And then I go to their website and it's like, not at all. I'm like, no, this is not where there's a gap here in terms of what it really means to not be about dieting.
Right. Yeah, it's so sneaky. It gets in there everywhere. And even the brands that are using like along the same lines, body positivity, the brands that are sort of using body positivity, but it's just sneaky diet culture and
Mhm.
sneaky like weight loss, tools that they're trying to sell. Or even if they're not, just people who are like, I said, maybe it's there's some cereal that definitely uses like women loving themselves and we eat food and we eat like real food or whatever. And but I mean, the gist of it is weight loss at the end of the day is how we love ourselves. Like weight loss and controlling food really closely. That is how we love ourselves. That's how we show our body love. And it's so sneaky. It's
Mhm.
just, it makes me so mad.
Yeah, yeah, me too, me too. I mean, that's the problem with popular. At least it means that what we're doing is starting to become like there's hints of it that are a little more mainstream if brands are
True.
starting to pick up on it. But
True.
it's just bad the way they go about it.
Yeah, that's the silver lining where at least the voices are starting to be heard. There's like yeah, it's getting out there, which is good.
Yeah. So you wrote a piece called Strong is the new skinny and talked about all of the issues with this. So can you talk a little bit about why you feel that way and why that's problematic?
Yeah, I think that that piece stemmed from just realizing that it's not, I don't know if it's the word is cool or a trend. It's not trendy to say that you want to be super thin anymore or that you want to lose weight. Like the trend is what's really acceptable is, well, I just want to be fit. You hear a lot, I don't care about weight loss. I just want to be toned. So it's kind of that idea, strong is the new skinny is something that you see a lot, and also healthy is the new skinny. And it's definitely, it seems positive on the outside, but when you really start to unpack it, it's just, again, it's cloaked diet culture. It's still the message that your body's not okay the way it is. You have to really funnel all your energy into controlling it, into changing it and manipulating it. It's your masterpiece, right? It's the thing that needs to be focused on. It's still that message. It's just in the cloaked form. And it's that sneaky element that I think makes it even more damaging because it's harder to call out. Like if somebody, in the 90s or whatever was promoting lose X amount of pounds in 3 days or whatever. It's kind of, I would hope that most of us would be like, well, that's obviously unhealthy. I mean, that's just sort of a tactic, a marketing tactic. But with the whole fitness culture, I think it's harder to call out as, clearly unhealthy and eating disordered in some sense. I just think it's harder to call out because it's harder to say to somebody when they say, I just want to be fit, I don't care about weight. It's harder to say. What I always want to say is, really? Like, is that really what you mean? Or do you want to be, now is it that you need to be thin and, super toned? So now is it just double the pressure? Is that what's happened? Yeah, it's damaging.
Well, I take real issue with the word fit too when people use it as a descriptor because being fit has nothing like it's not an aesthetic, it's not a look. Like being
Right.
I actually just don't even I kind of have I don't love that word. Let's just put it that way. I'd rather be like, if somebody's athletic because they actually engage in athletic activities if they can, obviously, if you don't have, there's certain conditions that would prevent someone from being able to do that. But
Yeah.
I take issue with that. Like, oh, that person looks so fit, or I just want to be fit because, like you said, it's essentially just being like saying, oh, that person's thin, or that person has low body fat, or I want to have lower body fat.
Yeah, you're right. It really is like if we stop to break down this term, what are we actually saying here? And it's really just all about the outside is what we mean by fit. It's just a totally appearance based. It's not, it's not real. The people that we're seeing going back to social media, the Inspiration or whatever, those accounts, it's not real what's happening. And the outside is not, it's dangerous to just start assuming that a person's outside is an accurate reflection of their health or their, current emotional state
Mm-hmm.
or their psyche. It's a dangerous assumption to make. And absolutely not true. And there are a lot of people who have come out from the Fitspiration, the quote Fitspiration crowd, and have, come out talking about how it was, obsessional, and it really stole a lot from their lives. It was very, very disordered, and people moving towards the more intuitive eating and moving for joy, kind of talking about, well, that fit, when I wasn't doing this, it was awful, but people would act like I was in the prime of my life or whatever. My health
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you wrote, the real problem with fitness culture is that we do not recognize the extremes of fitness as easily as we do extremes in weight loss, which I think is kind of what you're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think something that I noticed with that is it seems like for males in terms of fitness culture and getting really extreme with like there's just a big thing with weightlifting or whatever now, and getting protein, excessive amounts of protein.
Yes.
And yeah, and when I was working on the inpatient eating, just one of the inpatient units, I remember there were people who were bodybuilders who had kidney failure because of excessive protein intake. I think that's in that article actually. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's kidney failure, and then there's just it's harder to, for whatever reason, it's harder for us to recognize that that is incredibly unhealthy. That can kill you. What they're doing. I
Yeah.
think with weight loss, I guess we've just been educated more, or there's just been more awareness because of people understanding maybe eating disorders a little bit more, that extreme weight loss is unhealthy, and you'll have
Mm-hmm.
people call that out. But in terms of fitness being unhealthy, I just think it's really hard to do for most people.
Yeah. So my husband, like sometimes he'll show me suggested posts on his Instagram feed, and they're from people like just doing the most, like these guys doing the most extreme forms of eating, which I'm not even going to just say what it is sometimes because I can't even believe it. But I feel like because it's men, like it's more normalized, like it's not as called, like people aren't like, oh, that's disordered because it's coming from a man. And, most people associate, eating disorders with women, and obviously like, thin white women. And that's a whole issue in and of itself as well. But I feel like it's probably even harder to spot because these behaviors are like really normalized in that kind of bodybuilding or weightlifting male culture.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree with that completely. And I don't think the eating disorder community, the professionals and researchers, and I don't think we've expanded yet in terms of our understanding or our knowledge, and just communicating that eating disorders, that this is an eating disorder behavior, this bodybuilding and all these dieting things that guys are being asked to do, and this whole high muscle, low fat ratio thing that's really big right now. It's, just as disordered as anything else. We haven't started, I don't know, recognizing and getting the word out yet for whatever reason. Maybe it's hard for us, maybe we're not spotting it too.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of also goes back to, I think it's still hard. People still have a stigma of males having eating disorders like anorexia or something like that. There still seems to be some surprise when that's talked about, or when a male does have more traditional eating disorder, I guess. And that's, I think, a real shame. And again, that's on us. I think that's on the professionals and the researchers. We need to start being more proactive in helping this community and helping all the people we've marginalized by just focusing on thin, white, young females. We need to start getting the word out and being way more proactive in helping those communities, including men.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's such an issue, isn't it? Because I'm sure you see that all the time with people who are in larger bodies, different races and things like that. And it's especially, I feel like especially those in larger bodies, like people don't think that there's an eating disorder there just because of the appearance.
Yeah. And that's very dangerous as well, because somebody can have, a super restrictive eating disorder and be doing the same, dangerous things that somebody in a lower weight body is doing with, say, anorexia. And it's, you'll even have doctors condoning it, and professionals like missing it, not really seeing it, because eating disorders are the only illness where we focus on physical appearance as part of the symptomology.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense at the end of the day. And, I've heard people, we've kind of talk about atypical anorexia, which is somebody maybe in a higher weight body has anorexia. And I'm starting to think that atypical anorexia is really the people that that have really, really low weight bodies that we see in like the movies and stuff, because they're just the people that have gotten the attention. They're the people that we focus on. I think typical, it's probably the case that quote typical anorexia are the people in average weight or higher weight bodies, and we're just missing them. So we're calling them atypical when we finally sort of figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a problem.
Yes, and I went on a rant this weekend when I was presenting about this. I went on a rant about how we complain. I think professionals will talk about, the media, and the media coverage of eating disorders is only focused on thin women, right? And it's so true. But I think the media takes its notes from us. At the end of the day, we're the people who are sort of leading the troops, like professionals and researchers and activists. We're the people who lead the troops in helping society understand who gets an eating disorder and what it really is. So I think, again, it's on us. We have to be more proactive, to take more responsibility, and we have to start changing the way we think and write and help people with eating disorders.
Mm-hmm. And also, obviously, like from an institutional level, like, the health community, it definitely has to come from there, but also individuals just knowing that you don't have to look a certain way to have a problem. Like that's, because I think as individuals, we feel that way too. We feel like, well, I probably don't, I don't have a problem because I'm not, thin enough or whatever. So I think that, knowing that it really is about the behaviors and not about looking a certain way, you can hopefully advocate for yourself as well. And then find someone, like you, who is going to actually offer help to somebody and not judge them or diagnose them based on their size.
Right. Yeah. Truly understanding for each of us that the person with the really low weight eating disorder is the exception, not the rule. And that it's just in terms of weight, it's so little of it. I mean, it's just such a small symptom. There's so many other symptoms. And it really is, hey, is this impacting my quality of life? That's it, that's like really the main thing that we should be thinking about, that people should think of for themselves, because the whole, I'm not sick enough, or I'm not there yet, or I don't have a problem because I don't look like I have one, is just, it's just dangerous. So dangerous.
Well, I could talk to you about so many more things, but we're wrapping it up here. So where can people find more of you?
They can find me on my website, which is ColleenReichmann.com. And my Facebook, which is also Colleen Reichmann, my Facebook page, and then my Instagram account, which is at Dr. Colleen Reichmann.
Great.
I post a lot of ranty anti-diet quotes on there. So
I noticed that. Yes, I noticed that. I was like, oh, these are great. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed chatting with you and everything that you're up to and all the work that you're doing. You're doing some amazing work in this world.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, rock on. So much good stuff in that episode. You can find all the links and resources mentioned at summerinnanen.com/123. Colleen is amazing. I highly suggest following her, and especially on Instagram. She posts really great stuff. So you can find a link to that in the show notes, and I will talk to you next time. Rock on. I'm Summer Innanen, and I want to thank you for listening today. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Summer Innanen. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this show. I would be so grateful. Until next time, rock on.